What's the Grape Explorer talking about today? So if you follow us, we're into explaining about countries and grapes and regions. And we have one of the oldest wine regions in the world is called Cyprus. And one of the oldest wines is called Commandaria. And we're going to talk about this wine in general. If you're not familiar with Cyprus and exactly where it's located, we did break out our map here. And the only map that we could have an identity, at least in this larger range, is a map of Lebanon. And off the coast of Tripoli here, you have to go a good 1,000 miles into the Mediterranean before you hit Cyprus. But Cyprus is it's basically a Greek, if you want to call it a Greek island, but they have their own identity. They're part of the EU today, so they have their own status as a country under the EU. But this is the most famous wine, and we're going to also pinpoint it on the map here, so you can actually see the map of Cyprus. And if you look here, there is almost an appellation system where they rank the wines. This is UNESCO as well, so it falls under historical perspectives. But Commandaria is the most famous wine that grows there. So the grape, there's actually two grapes involved. So you have what's called Mavro, which is the red grape. It's almost like a purple grape, which is very, very rich and beautiful for the production here. And but at the same time, the other grape is called Xynisteri, and that is is another grape. So that's a white wine grape. So you blend these two grapes. And traditionally, the way that you make this wine, which is fortified wine, a lot of the producers had a beautiful system that was set up where they would bring the grapes, they would sun dry them on their roofs of their houses or their wineries, and then once those grapes become sun dried, and they felt it was the optimum time, they would then they would crush the juice and send it into a pipe into the winery, where it would go into cylinders where it would ferment, and then it would be put in wood for at least 2 years. And that's the process of making Commandaria, which is a fabulous wine. But just to tell you the history, which is the most beautiful thing. So in the 12th century, Richard the Lionheart claimed that this was the finest wine in the world. He served it at his wedding. He said it was the wine of king and the king of wines. And therefore, it became famous from that day. But then he sold the island of Cyprus to the Knights Templar. That's the reason why, if you look on the bottle here, you'll see the emblem of the Knights Templar. And even to this day, when a lot of the properties that are in this area have the fleur-de-lis, which was actually identified as the king's fleur-de-lis, but they actually bought this island because it was on the way. They were the guardians of Jerusalem. So on the pilgrim road to get to Jerusalem, you had to pass through Cyprus. So obviously the Knights Templar bought this and it became quite famous because of the pilgrim route there. So that's the reason why they call it St. John de Commandaria. You can see on here. But this is a beautiful bottle of wine. And again, when you taste this type of wine, it's a fortified wine, so it's going to be sweet. Yes, but that's the beauty of this wine, because you don't have to drink too much of it. And actually, you can see by this cork that I have right here that it's a wine that you only have a little glass like this, and then you can put this back into the bottle. And it's almost like a liqueur, but it's not a liqueur. It's grapes, it's wine, it's juice, fermented juice, but it's a wine that you only need to drink a little bit. So let's smell this wine. Oh, you get a lot of like cherries. You get Mascherino cherries off of this wine. I know this Mavro because in Greece, one time when I was distributing Greek wines, I had Mavro Daphne, which is also a sweet wine from Greece. But that Mavro is interesting because it gives out that beautiful scent of cherries right off the nose. It's like cherries jubilee, just a beautiful smell. But then you get all of those different figs and nuts and almost grilled nuts on the nose, which is just fabulous. If you've never ever had an experience of this wine, you have to go out and get it. This wine is under $30 a bottle. And it's something to experience. This is a smaller bottle too. You can see it's like a 500 ml bottle. So you don't need a lot of this wine, but if you're really into history like me and you really want to learn about wines, you start here. And you know, you don't have to pair this. This is actually dessert. You can drink this for dessert, but I would drink this after dinner too, because I think that it's almost like just as good as having a port or having a sherry, or you know, we talked about Madeira. So let's taste this wine. It's luscious. Oh, now how many terms that you can actually say when you taste wines? Oh, and I'm tasting that beautiful, like almost caramel and nut and toffee in the finish. How many wines can you actually say is luscious? Not too many. This wine is absolutely fabulous, and I think that it should be on the radar of anybody who considers themselves somebody that really is into wine and wants to learn about wine, or really wants to experiment, because this is from a country, I guarantee most people don't know Cyprus. We want to point the island out one more time before we leave, but at the same time, this is the nirvana of sweet wines coming from Eastern Mediterranean, and it's called Commandaria. Cheers.